Hey everybody. I just built another PC from a Facebook Marketplace ad that somebody found of mine, and this is it right here. And I'm going to show you how I built it in this video, but just kind of give you a quick recap of it. You're going to see it in the video, but it's a RX 580 build, and I'm using the Ryzen 5 3600, and my RAM is 16 gigabytes of RAM at 3200 megahertz speed, 16 latency. Building budget computers is, believe it or not, something that I think everybody should learn how to do because it's kind of the way of the future. I think this is going to be knowledge we all need to know. So that's kind of why I do these videos and these builds, and I hope you enjoy it. Okay, your computers come in. Let's go over things one by one here. We'll start with your motherboard. The B550M motherboard is one of my favorite motherboards just because it has Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, and all the newest generations of PCIe slots and M.2 slots, and it's just $110. Yeah, there are better boards out there. The more expensive motherboards, they have maybe a little bit higher class thermals. They have extra slots for different things that are that you're not going to really use, which is why we didn't spend that money. But this is a fantastic motherboard for what you're using it for, which is gaming, streaming, and normal office work. This will get you through that and then some. So it's a really good motherboard. Next, we have your graphics card, which I'm really excited about. The RX 580 is a fantastic card. It's got some of the best thermals. It's not going to overheat on you. And you're going to be getting great frame rate with it. The Sapphire Pulse is a great brand by AMD. Let's go ahead and move on to your SSD here, which is the Western Digital brand. Now, your read and write speeds are 2400. And the reason I like M.2s is because this is the bee's knees. If you're a Windows 10 user, you've got to put your operating system on some sort of SSD. If you don't, you're doing yourself a disservice. This is going to make your loading times a lot faster. If you need additional storage for more games, put those on a mechanical hard drive. But your operating system is perfect to have on an M.2 as well as your mainly used apps. That's why we got this. The Ryzen 5 3600 is a awesome processor, one of the most common ones that people buy. 6 cores, 12 threads, perfect for what you're doing, for sure. I mean, you can stream on this, you can just do normal work on this. It's a fantastic value CPU chip. You can look online, tons of reviews talk about how popular this guy is. Now let's go ahead and jump into this fan here because it's next on there. Anyway, I got an extra fan for you because of your case, which I'll talk about in a second. We need an extra fan because most cases don't come with enough fans, so I had to grab one. I like this fan. It's just a normal fan brand from Amazon that'll do the work. All right, so now we have your case. Now, this case is a budget case. Let's just be honest, it is a budget case, but it's going to do everything you want it to do. The reason it's got great reviews, but the reason I saw some of the negative reviews is because it is hard to build with it because of cable management. You have to kind of weave the cables in and out in strategic ways. Sometimes the space down here isn't enough. You have to put some of the cables in the hard drive case. That's something for me to worry about. Let me worry about the cable management. But the reason I like it is because it's cheap. It's only 40, I think it was like 30 some dollars. It has a tempered glass side panel, which you don't see here. You'll see at the end. Not only that, but you have plenty of room to put storage. You have 3 mechanical hard drives you can put down here. You have an SSD card you can put here, an SSD card you can put here, and something I know you like because I know that sometimes you asked about the 5.25-inch CD drives, Blu-ray drives. If you ever do install it, there is a bay right up here and a notch on the front panel that you can actually put one of those drives up here and connect them if you ever want to in the future. I still think that most Blu-ray drives and CD drives today are good for external drives, but that can go right there. So anyway, this is a fantastic case. I'm excited building it. A fantastic case for the budget, tempered glass. You can see what's on the inside. I think you're going to like it a lot. Let's go ahead and go to your RAM. So your RAM is the Oloy brand. So you can see on here that you have, let me zoom in here. There you go. You got 3200 megahertz at 16 latency. It's fantastic. It's going to be great RAM for you for gaming. Obviously, faster RAM, the better. I've seen a lot of pre-builts that have only 3,000 megahertz of speeds and stuff, and I don't like that. I think that you need to have at least 3200 to have a good gaming experience, and that's what you have. If you need to add more RAM, just make sure you buy the same, and you want to keep this brand, you just make sure you buy the same speed and the same latency, and you shouldn't have any problems. Now we'll go ahead and go to the power supply. 650 watts. It's more than enough. It's just more than enough power, but it's a budget brand, and what I'm going to do first is actually test to make sure this power supply is working. We'll plug it in there, we'll be good to go. But let's go ahead and get onto the build, and we'll start with the power supply, make sure it's working, and then we'll go from there. All right, so here's your power supply. Now it is a non-modular power supply. All that means is that we don't have special inputs here that you can put in only the cables you need. We went the budget route, which is not the bad route. The budget route just means that it's going to come with these ketchup mustard looking cables all together in one spot. But listen, it's a very good power supply. It does the job. There's no reason, unless you're looking for simple aesthetics, that you need to spend more on a power supply. So we put that money that we could have spent on the power supply for the aesthetics into something more and better, such as your graphics card, which is going to do you very well. So what I do first all the time is I plug it in, and I'm going to go ahead and turn this on in a moment. But before I turn it on, I'm going to basically plug this guy in to the 24 pin power connector. This is just a tester thing that I have to test your power supply. So let me plug this in, turn this on, and make sure it works. All right, so I got that plugged in. I'm going to turn this baby on in the back just by pressing the power button, turn it on. And it's starting to spin, and that's all I need to do. That's all I wanted to check, and your power supply is working. This is a intake fan, and what that means is that it's bringing in cooled air to keep it cool on the inside so it can spit it back out of the back. So this sounds weird, but usually what you do in the case is you turn this on upside down if there's a grate on the bottom of your case, and in our case, you can see right here that there's a grate right there. So I'll be basically when I put this into the case, I'll make sure it's upside down so the intake fan is sucking in the cooled air from the bottom. Make sure there's a gap there, and it's going to be cooling the power supply. All right, we just opened your motherboard, and I always like unboxing the motherboard. It just feels good. So let me just explain the motherboard real quick so you can know what we're going to be doing. So on the motherboard, you have a few things you need to be aware of. This is where you put the brain of the computer chip. We're going to do that in a moment. These screws over here represent where you need to put the fan. We're going to be popping these off because the fan is actually designed to be screwed into the holes. This is screwed in currently. This is a heat sink for your, basically these control the voltages that go into your computer chip, into the chipset, and this heat sink keeps it cool and makes sure that your power supply is not drawing in too much to overheat your computer chip. Over here, down here, you have the actual heatsink for the chip itself. So the B550 chip is in here, basically giving all the instructions for the motherboard. You have your RAM slots where we're going to put our RAM, and you have your what you call the PCIe slots for your graphics card, with a couple extra PCIe slots down here to put a sound card, extra USB slots, extra storage devices, whatever you want. And one of the reasons I like this graphics card is because it gives you plenty of space for your graphics card to go here without covering one of these up, which I like a lot. You also have on the side here your outputs. So you can see your Wi-Fi antennas go here. You have your audio and USB ports. Now this VGA and the HDMI port you actually won't be able to use on the motherboard because the motherboard does not have an internal graphics on it. So that's fine, that's common. Don't use these because the computer chip you have, it's actually strong because it doesn't have integrated graphics on there. Nothing on the chip is used to give out graphics. That's all designed for your graphics card. So everything on the graphics card should be sufficient for your outputs, just so you know. Obviously you have your pins here for your power supply, 24 pin and 8 pin. We'll go over that later. But this is a very, very good board. And like I said, I use this in a lot of builds. All right, now with your motherboard comes a few cables. These are your SATA connector cables that are going to connect to your hard drives if you ever get them. They're very easy. You have 2 of them installed. And to be honest, you can get 8 terabytes of hard drive space for $155 on Amazon. So you might not even need both of these, but that's what these are for, to connect your hard drives. Your Wi-Fi antennas, which are very easy to screw on at the end. This is the I/O shield that goes on the outside of the motherboard, like right here, when you put on your case, which you'll put on later. And you have some screws here that you're going to use to tie down your you're going to use this to tie down your M.2 drive when we put it in there, and some nice aesthetic things you could put on your case if you want to, with some warranty information. This disc here, you actually are not going to need. This is the drivers. We're going to install those via the internet anyway, so we're going to kind of disregard this. But that is the unboxing of the case, of the motherboard. All right, now we're going to move on to the M.2 drive, and we're going to put this in first just because I want to kind of get it out of the way. The M.2 drive is going to go right here. You can see I've already unscrewed part of it. Let me bring these screws over here to the side. This top black part is actually the heatsink that's going to go on top of it. They can get hot. Do you always need a heatsink? No, but this comes with it, so why not use it? So I'll go ahead and take this off. You can see on the bottom there's a heatsink here. I'll go ahead and take off this film, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the drive. I'll probably have to stop filming to do it, but basically I'm going to pick the drive up and it's going to fit right into the socket right here, and it's going to screw in right here. I do need to take off. Oops. Thank goodness I didn't fall on the motherboard. I do need to take this off, though. They don't need the middle one. They only need the one that it's going to be screwing into. At least that's what the manual of the motherboard says. When in doubt, always look at the manual. It actually is helpful. So basically, this is now ready for me to pop on the drive and screw it down. And yeah, I'll show you that in a second. Okay, so you can see I placed it in there. It literally just fits right into that slot. You just slide it right in. It fits snug. Now, the motherboard, remember, comes with these like little tiny screws that are used to screw this down on top of that so it's flush with the motherboard. And then I basically put the heatsink on top, and that is it. So I'm going to go ahead and get that done, and we'll get the CPU chip installed next. Okay, so the heatsink's on there. Now, I'm laughing at myself because I forgot that the heatsink screws are actually the screws to hold it down. I was trying to use with these little small screws that came with the motherboard, but I actually didn't need those because the heatsink screws actually hold down this M.2. So if you were wondering, I had to take that screw out, and I used these screws instead to keep it in there. But it's snug. And that is where we're going to be putting your operating system and your main games. And once you can upgrade to some storage to put your videos and your photos and all that stuff, that'll probably go on your mechanical hard drive. But for all your main applications, put them on this guy, 500 gigabytes right there. And hey, if you need another M.2 storage to keep it fast, you can put it right here. There's another one right here for you that you can put things on, and that's what those screws over there are going to be used for. Or you can get a SATA solid state drive, which is a little slower than these guys, but those are also very fast as well. So you have plenty of room to upgrade. All right, your Ryzen CPU. This guy is going to be going right here. So every board has this little arm for every Ryzen board, every AMD board that has an AM4 slot has this little arm here that you can see I just pull out and lift up, and I pull it all the way, that unlocks it. And then when I put the chip in there and I pull it down, it locks it in there. Now, what you can see on here, right around here, there's a little triangle. What we're going to do is we're going to line up, let's see if you can see it, the bottom corner, that little yellow triangle on the bottom left right there, lines up right here. So we're going to put that in there with that corner right there, and it's going to literally softly just go right in. I don't have to even touch anything beyond just maneuvering it so those triangles line up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put it in there, lock it, and we'll go to the next step. All right, that chip is on there. It is good. Now it's time to pick up this cooler that came with it and put it on top. Now, the coolers that come with these chips, I love that that AMD does this basically, because the coolers, sometimes you have to buy a separate one if you're not happy with the cooling. These coolers do the right job, and if you're intending to overclock or go hardcore, maybe upgrade to an even bigger air cooler. I mean, on my computer, I have a massive, you can see in there, I have this massive like cooler because every now and again I do try to overclock, but this is going to be perfect for what you're going to be doing. Just watch your temperatures. If you realize that as you try to push your computer to the limits by increasing the frequencies, yeah, you're going to want to take care of your computer chip better to keep it cool. But you do not need that. This is the Ryzen chips at stock have great power already, and this should cool it just fine. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to install this like this. So to kind of give you an idea, I'm going to put it right on top of this like this. I'm going to remove these screws here because these are actually going to screw right in. I'm going to pop it in there, and this little cord is going to be connected to the fan header. Right up here at the top it says CPU fan. That's all I got to do. Just plop it on there, screw it in, and put it right on that fan header. And now my Ryzen chip has a cooler. Now, one thing about that, every single cooler you put on needs to have thermal paste. So I could put thermal paste on top of that chip, but if you look at the back of this, there's already a thermal pad on the back right there, that little shiny thing at the bottom. I'm going to put it right on top, and that's actually sufficient. They come with it already prepared, so I actually don't need to apply any thermal paste at all. But if you didn't have any sort of thermal padding or paste, you'd actually have to apply it, which is extremely cheap. Okay, now it's time to install your RAM, which you can see I have right here. Now the RAM's actually very easy to install. The motherboard tells you, either in the manual or sometimes on here, like it does here, it says, okay, your RAM, because your computer chip has a dual memory channel almost always, unless you're going crazy and you have a bigger chip. You have your RAM that has two memory channels going to the computer chip. And on this one it says, okay, you need to make sure you use both memory channels, and the way to do that at the beginning is to put it at DIMMA2 and DIMMB2, so A and B channels. And so to do that, it just says, okay, put it in this slot here and this slot over here. So that's what I'm going to do. There you have it. RAM is now installed, and now I can move on to the case and the power supply to get this thing installed into the case. Okay, when you're working with the case for the first time, the first thing you need to install is the I/O shield. It's very easy to do. You basically make sure that you line it up right with the way the motherboard is supposed to be designed. So if you look at my motherboard, that's the way that the I/O shield needs to go in. So I'm going to go ahead and come to the motherboard. I'm going to come to the case. I'm going to plop this in on the side here, click it in, and get that I/O shield installed so that my case will basically align right next to it as well. And there you can see it's laid out perfectly, ready for me to put the motherboard on top. Now, one thing I forgot about this case before I put the motherboard on is that there isn't a spot at the top. Here, let me zoom out. There isn't a spot up here to where you can actually push through what they call the 8-pin power connector. So what I need to do is I need to put the power supply in first, make sure that that power connector is behind the motherboard when I install the motherboard, so that that 8-pin power connector is basically ready and waiting for me to put into the motherboard up there. So that's what actually I'm going to do first. I'm going to bring the power supply in here. Remember, I'm going to put the fan facing down on top of this, and you'll be surprised, but these little openings on the back are perfectly laid out for whichever way you spin the power supply to screw onto the back. So I'm going to screw it onto the back with the fan side down, and I'm going to push the cables back behind here, just through that hole, and that way I can weave the 8-pin cable up behind the motherboard ready for me, and you'll see what that looks like in the next video. Okay, so what you can see is I got my power supply installed. It's just sitting there. Now I tipped this on the side so I can put the motherboard in. It is a little frustrating, all the cables are back there that I'm sitting on, but you know, I build stuff like this all the time when I have to. So I have the 8-pin connector. This is the 8-pin connector that's going to plug into the motherboard, already wound up behind where the motherboard's going to be going. And I also made sure that I put these little standoffs where they need to go for my board. This board is designed as a micro ATX board. And so obviously I'm going to need, if I just had a what they call a mini ITX board, I would only need 4 standoffs. This one, that one, the one in the left corner, and up there. But because I have a micro ATX board, which is a little bit bigger of a board, I need this one, as well as this one down here. So I basically put those all in before I started the video, and now I'm good to go ahead and pick that up, plop it on top, and use these screws, these little smaller screws, to anchor it down. And that's it. And once this is in, then that's just plugging in the cables and getting this thing started. All right, we got it in there. Now, the hardest screw to get in, if you can probably guess, is the one right up there next to the 8-pin power supply. So anyway, I got that in there, all good. Everything is anchored, and I put your M.2 little tiny screws, and I put them in here. You're not using them yet, but when you do need them, they're sitting there waiting for you. That way you don't lose those. So that is that. We are now ready to move on to start connecting our power connectors and putting on the front of the chassis, so we can actually connect all the other, USB and other things to the motherboard. The one thing I'm going to do real quick, actually, because I forgot about it, is connect this to the other fan header. I have a fan header right here. It looks like they included the old type as well, just in case you're using an older motherboard. But I'm going to put the fan header right onto a fan header onto the motherboard, and get your exhaust fan out of there as well. Well, you're not going to believe this, but I actually can't use this case. This is the USB front panel connector, and it's supposed to go right here, and there's absolutely no space to get it in there. That is a lesson learned for me. Luckily, I have another case here that's about maybe just a little bit more expensive than this. Oh my gosh, that's just surprising. So I just learned something. I'm going to switch cases real quick and just, pull everything out, put everything in the new case. But that is just kind of frustrating. I got to return this now. Dang. Oh well. On to that. Okay, round 2. I just switched cases here. Now let me back up. This is the case we're going to be using. It's the Q300L by, oh man, what's the name? Cooler Master. That's right, by Cooler Master. Now I got everything installed. Everything's perfect now. Let me just tell you quickly about the case, because I did switch cases. It's a slightly larger case, but you can see here, I don't have anything stopping me from putting in my USB front cables that should go right here. I have everything else installed. Down here at the bottom, I have all the ports installed. Now, it looks confusing, but I promise you that these ports, there's no other way to put them in other than the way I did them. You can't mess it up. I know it looks like you can, but they literally go right where they're asked to go. Even on here, it says, let me zoom in on it right here. It tells you where the power switch goes, where the reset switch goes, all that. So it's very easy to do. Now, let me tell you about the case. So the case is a little bit different. You see that the front's a lot more open, which I really like. If I go to the back, I haven't done cable management yet, but this is where you're going to put your hard drive and you're going to be putting your solid state drives over here, which you can also fit on the other side. So you have a lot of room still for your storage space. It's just in a little bit different spot. But again, for this case, the first thing you're going to probably put in here is a hard drive on the back. But again, just use this M.2 slot right here waiting for you that you can put another really fast drive on as well. So you don't have to use one of those spots if you don't want to. So you can see here I got the 24-pin power connector over here. And up here I have the 8-pin power connector connected. I can just probably do a little bit better cable management, which I'll do at the end. But now that I have everything up and ready to go, it's time for me to switch over to your graphics card, which we're going to install next. All right, let's be honest. This is the main reason you got the rig. You want a good graphics card. The RX 580 is fantastic, 90 plus FPS on modern games. It's a very good cooling graphics card, and it looks really nice. This metal plate on top just looks really nice. Going to make your rig look really, really good. It's a hefty graphics card. Not too hefty where it's going to bring your rig down, but you can just feel that it's got power. It's got the ability to handle games. And it's going to stay cool. So how does this go in? Well, you have your PCIe times 4 times 16 slot right here. And this is where I'm going to be putting it. Now this is a Generation 3 speed graphics card, which is fine. It's a very, very fast graphics card. But obviously as you go forward, you're going to want to get, let's say in 2 or 3 years, you want to upgrade your graphics card. You can get a Generation 4 speed graphics card. And this board is designed to run Generation 4 speeds when you upgrade to it. That's why you got this board. It's a fantastic board. So what you can see over here is I opened up these expansion slots on the side because this guy's got to go in here. And you see how thick it is? It's going to take up 2 of those spots. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to snug it right into that spot there, and it's going to poke out the side with all of your HDMI, DVI, and DisplayPort available for you. And there she is. She is installed. And I just basically screwed in on the side here just to support screws and reapplied the little casing on the outside here. So now it's in there, it's secure, it's locked in there, and it is good to go. So last thing is put the fan on. I'm going to put this in there. We're going to turn this sucker on, and we're going to see if it posts and make sure everything looks good. Okay, now it's time for the moment of truth. I've got my computer set up over here. Everything's plugged in. I have my monitor over here plugged into the graphics card, into an HDMI port. I'm going to use these first 2 USB ports just to make sure my keyboard and my mouse are working when I turn it on. But let's see the moment of truth. Let's turn this sucker on and see if she starts up. Oh, looks good. We got a light on for that. Yeah, she's fan spinning here. Okay. Okay, the fan that's not spinning, is this one. So I forgot to plug it in. I will plug that in up there once I turn this off. Let's see if this works though. This fan's spinning though. That's bringing in some cold air. That's nice. Now we're just waiting for everything to register so we can see a display on our screen. So let's just give it a second here as we wait. Oh, I know why it's not working. I haven't plugged in the power supply for the PCIe slot. Let me turn it off and let me plug that in. All right, so I got that sucker in there, and now let's see if this works. All right, now I got that back fan working. Everything plugged in right now. All fans are working. That is a good sign. There we go. Now the graphics card. Look at that. We got some stuff. All right, let me just show you one here real quick. So we have your Ryzen 5 3600 is recognized. It has your DRAM in here. We're going to fix that up to make it go the fast we have. And we're going to go F1 to start setup. So here we go. Let's see if this USB works. F1. Function F1. Let's see. There we go. It went in there. Thank goodness. Okay, so let me just talk about a couple things. So here's your CPU speed. That's good. But the DDR speed, here we go, the mouse. So both, good, they're working. The DDR speed, we need to make sure that it's going to 3200 megahertz, which is what your RAM's set at. So I'm going to go ahead, and what you can see is I'm going to go to memory. And under memory, it's going to tell me my XMP profiles. You see how it's recognizing over here what they are? It is recognizing that as 3200. So we can choose either one of these profiles. And we're going to just, what they call overclocking your memory. That's totally safe. XMP profile 1. That's all we need to do here. I'm going to go up here and say escape. And I'm going to save it. And now we should come back in here and see everything. And I'm going to go ahead and pause the video. Now we're back up, and you can see our DDR speed is 3200 megahertz, which is what we have set at, and everything looks good to go. Everything looks good to go. You actually don't really need to come to the BIOS like at all. But let's see, I can show you quickly. One cool thing, fan info. You can see it's recognizing my system, my main fan, and it has a certain setting of how fast it goes depending on the temperature. And I have the system fans 1, 2, and I don't think I have 3. Yeah, I only have 2 so far that are connected. 1 and 2 and 3. And it tells you what the RPMs are as well. So they're all in here, they're all connected, and I'm feeling pretty good. So now we can install Windows, and that's what I have on this. Windows essentially is installed by downloading the, you need to download the, basically the installer, which is very easy to do. You install it on a flash drive, you plug it in there, and I'll restart this and see if it boots up, and I'll show you what that looks like. Okay, I went ahead and changed USB ports to see if they all work. I put the installer on the back. Let's just go ahead and press escape on this guy. We're going to go ahead and get out of here. It's going to reboot. And let's see here. Escape. And get out. Now it should reboot for us. And usually it recognizes that USB drive immediately. If it doesn't work this time, then I'll make sure I go and change the boot order, which is very easy to do. But let's see if it automatically recognizes it. Let's just wait. We see a little blinking light. I think it's working. Let's see here. We should see the Windows logo pop up if it's working. Let's see if it found the device. Yeah, this looks good. This looks good. Come on, show me the Windows logo. Show me the money. There she is. There she is. Okay, so now we're going to set up Windows. I'll show you the first part. So you obviously English, US, next. Now, I don't have anything connected for internet right now. I technically have Wi-Fi, but I'm not going to connect to Wi-Fi or to Ethernet. Now, I'm going to say I don't have a product key because I don't. You don't need a product key to install Windows. You actually don't need a product key to even use Windows. We're using Windows 10 Home. That's where we're going to install. So if you do ever activate it, make sure you purchase Windows 10 Home because that's what you have on the software. I accept. Next, we're going to do a custom install. And you can see it's recognizing our drive. And we're going to say, yes, that's the drive we want to use. I'm going to say next. And now it's just going to copy. I'm going to pause the video. It's just installing all the drivers. And sorry, it's just installing the software. And it's just taking some time. So I'm going to keep this paused as it just goes through it all. All right, it's finishing up. And during this time, I was just basically moving the mouse USB around to make sure that all the USB ports were working. And I verified they are. That's just a quick way to do that. And now it's just going to restart, and we're going to continue the Windows installation. So it's working. We're just going forward with all these steps, one by one by one. All right, so you are in the US. Yep, US keyboard's fine. We're going to skip any additional. And we're not going to connect to the internet. I'm going to say I don't have internet because it just makes it quicker and easier. So I'm going to continue with a limited setup. And you'll see why in a second. Basically, once I'm done with all this, I want to get this done first. And then I'm going to go ahead and jump into the internet and download the drivers. Okay, who's using this PC? I'll just call this new user 1. New user 1. And for what I'm doing, I'm going to say next. And I'm not going to put a password. I'll just keep it blank. Next. Because I just want to get in. Now, the choose privacy settings, I've looked at a lot of videos on this. And people say you get a lot better performance on your PC if you turn those off. So, and I have not had a problem with that, and that's how I use my computer. So I'm going to turn those off and say accept. When you make your own account, you can decide if you want to turn those off or not. Do more, so I'm going to say no for this. I'm not going to do any sort of syncing of devices. I don't need to. I'm not going to have Cortana work with me. I don't feel like it. I'm not going to use it anyway. And now we're going forward with the install. You basically get this screen and just wait for it to go. And kaboom, we are in Windows. So I'm going to go ahead and get connected to the internet, start running Windows updates. And on my other computer, I'm going to start downloading. The drivers. So what you have to do is you go to MSI. I can do this on the other computer as well, but it's faster if I can get it going here while that's doing updates. So I'm going to go to the support page for the MSI B550M Pro VDH. I'm going to go ahead and go to the driver updates, and I'll check the BIOS as well. I might as well, but driver, Windows 10 64, And I'm going to basically install all the drivers I need. You're not going to be using any of this RAID. RAID is for connecting multiple like storage devices together, which you are not going to use. That's not common. But the chipset, the VGA drivers, just in case. Actually, you're not going to use those. You don't have the VGA port for the. You don't have internal graphics card for the motherboard, so you don't need that. So I'll do LAN, chipset, and audio. That's what I'm going to download, and we'll put it on the computer. So that is the next step, and I'm going to plug the internet onto this and run Windows updates. That's all I'm going to do, and we should be good to go. So I just typed Windows updates into my computer search bar, and I went over here and just ran a bunch of updates. You can see it's running them, and it's telling me I got to restart. So I'm going to just keep doing these updates until it says I don't need to anymore, keep restarting until I'm done. Now, what I'm also doing is I'm plugging my USB jack into the front port. I'm going to also put it into the back to make sure the audio is working on everything. I'll go to YouTube or something and watch a video, and so far it is working. So I'm just doing some tests and getting these drivers installed bit by bit. Okay, so I went ahead and you can see I got some more restarts I got to do. I'll do those in a moment. I also went ahead and installed the AMD drivers. It just went to the AMD website, and they guide you to the download link for the software to basically keep your drivers activated for your drivers for your graphics card. So you got nothing to worry about there. It's going to work just fine, and it'll kind of update automatically for you. So that's installing right now right here. So I'm going to go ahead and install the Ultima version because it always asks me to, so I'll install that. Once this is installed, I will go ahead and restart my computer as it prompts me to. Okay, so anyway, I'm going to just keep running these updates. I'm going to check for updates one more time just to make sure we're good. You can see the AMD software still asking me to restart. It just restarted. Yeah, see, I'm updated on Windows. I'll just keep checking that from time to time as I go through, because who knows, maybe something else comes up. But it looks like Windows is good, and I'm going to restart my computer one more time, and then I'll finally install what I have on this USB, which I download from the MSI website, to make sure my drivers are good. And then the last thing I'll do is I'll go into the BIOS to make sure the BIOS is updated completely, and that's it. Alright, first driver I'm going to go through is the chipset drivers, and I won't do all this, but basically when I install these, I just double click on them. Sometimes they say setup, and I just basically install them, but that's working there. And while that's going on, I'll just check this. So Bluetooth driver, for instance, I will go until I find, let's see, Windows 10, and here's the setups right here, the application right here, Windows installer. Anyway, I can use those, and I can get these installed onto the computer. All these drivers I'm going to go through. So anyway, that's the next step. So I'm going to get these installed, and lastly, I'm going to install an application where I can check the graphics settings and make sure the graphics card's working really well, and that's by installing on this USB. I have the Unengine VALLY, which is a very good benchmarking tool. So I'm going to run that on here just to see how well we are doing on our graphics and everything like that, so you can see a good benchmark. But I'm going to run it after I get everything done on here. So that's it. So last thing, so I'm going to install the drivers. I'm going to get this software installed for the benchmark, and then the next video you're going to see is me running the benchmark, so you can kind of see how it works. Now we're going to go ahead and run this benchmark, and I'll kind of pause it and run it as we go through. But I went to Extreme HD. This is very common benchmark to go. Let's see how good your graphics card does. I'm going to run it, and let's see how good we do now. Just so you know, this is Extreme HD, high anti-aliasing. It's very, very high. So I just want you to know that the frames per second on this one is going to be a little bit. You got to understand that you're going extreme graphics that are usually beyond the scope of normal games. Just to test how good we can do, and we can compare that score to other scores online in a second. So I'm going to run this, and let's see how we do. All right, so it's running. You can see it's actually pretty smooth, but our FPS right now is at the top right corner, 62. So I'm going to let this keep doing its thing as it goes, but it looks really nice. Okay, so far our average FPS has been about 60 on these extremely high settings. HD, 1080p. Okay, here are your results. Average FPS of 24.5, and your score is 2200 on these settings. Now let me just show you a quick comparison. Over here, here's a YouTube video of somebody doing the same thing. You can see here, RX 580. They had a little bit less score than you, and that's probably because they didn't have as good of a processor as you, nor as good RAM as you. So you have better processor, better RAM, which probably gave you a better score. So it looks like everything is working great on your end, and you are good to game. Now, this FPS does not mean that that's going to be your average FPS on normal games. It's going to be much higher than that. remember, this is purposely trying to take the graphics to the extreme. So if you were to play a normal game, you could get FPS into the hundreds, especially for low graphics heavy games. I mean, Fortnite probably be in the hundreds for sure. So keep that in mind, and your computer is now ready. Oh, one last thing. We got to make sure we have a good BIOS, and the BIOS is up to date. So I'm just going to restart the computer, and as you restart, you press the delete key. And remember, the BIOS update's on this little flash drive unzipped, ready to go. So I'm pressing delete. We're going to get into the BIOS here in a second. And let me pause it so we're in there. All right, here we are in the BIOS. The M flash is where you go to update the BIOS. I'm going to say M flash. Sensible reboot. Yeah, it's fine. So let's enter flash mode. All right, when you're in flash mode, it's going to recognize the USB that has has the BIOS version on there. So I'm going to look at current BIOS. We're at E7C95AMS. So I'm going to go ahead and select this guy. And here's the one that I want to install. And you can see that the version is going to go from this June version of 2.0 to 2.4. And yep, we're going to go ahead and update it. So I'm going to say, yep, that's the one we want to use. Say yes, and it's updating. This is where I step back. I don't let anybody near the computer, and I let it complete. So I'll pause the video until it's done. You'll see how it restarts. But this is how you update the BIOS. I checked for the BIOS updates once every 3 months, and no, it's not necessary to do if it's working just fine. But it will be necessary if you ever update your chip to the next generation higher of Ryzen, which is going to be the Zen 3 architecture. Right now you're on Zen 2, which is what I'm on as well, because Zen 3 is not out yet. So I'm going to let this update, and then your computer is definitely going to be good to go. Okay, BIOS update is completed. Now it's just naturally restarting, and we're going to go right back into Windows. And we are good to go. And I'll just run that VALLY benchmark one more time, make sure it's working. Go back into the BIOS, make sure we are updated to the most recent, and we are completed officially. So that's the end. I hope that helps you learn how this works, and enjoy your new computer.